According to Section 2, Subsection 1 of Hire Purchase Act 1967, that it is an agreement for a letting of goods with an option to purchase and a purchase of goods by way of installment. The Hire Purchase Act of 1967 is a piece of legislation that governs the hire purchase agreements in the United Kingdom. It outlines the right and responsibility of both the hire, which is the individual or business acquiring the goods, and the owner, which is the entity providing the goods on hire purchase. On some general information, it's important to note that specific legal advice should be sought when dealing with a hire purchase agreement. As a hire under the Hire Purchase Act 1967, the person entitled to certain statutory rights. According to Right of Hire Section 8, Subsection 1, Subsection A, is right to resign the agreement with the owner. The cases is Lau Hee Tia v. Harje Engineering Neighbourhood. This right includes, number 1, the right of ownership. Once you have paid all the installment as agreed in the hire purchase agreement, you have the right to become the owner of the goods. The second one is the right to terminate the agreement. If you have paid at least 1/3 of the total amount payable under the agreement, you have the right to terminate the agreement without incurring any further liabilities, except for potential excess, wear, and tear of damage to the goods.
There are also the right to early settlement, Section 40, in parenthesis 4. A person have the right to settle the agreement early by paying off the outstanding amount before the agreed upon term, potentially resulting in a reduction of the total amount payable. Then, right to redress for faulty goods, Section 56, in parenthesis 5. If the goods are faulty or not as described, a person have the right to seek redress from the owner. This can include repair, replacement, or partial refund. Not to forget the right to termination for non-payment, Section 30 in parenthesis 3. If a person have paid less than 1/3 of the total amount payable and fail to meet the payment obligations, the owner has the right to terminate the agreement and repossess the goods. However, they must follow specific legal procedures and give a person notice before doing so.
Introduction. In this scenario, Zila found Mila's lost handbag and returned it to her. Subsequently, Zila learned about the reward that Mila had advertised in the newspaper for the return of the handbag. However, Mila refused to give the reward to Zila. The legal principle that may apply in this case is known as unilateral contract. A unilateral contract is a type of contract where one party, Mila, made a promise to offer a reward in exchange for specific act or performance, the return of the lost handbag, by another party, Zila, by fulfilling her part of the agreement. Zila may argue that she is entitled to claim the reward. A proposal must be definitely promised to be bound provided certain specific terms are accepted. Issue. The issue that can state from the statement given whether Zila delayed knowledge of the reward offer affect her entitlement to claim the reward. The next issue is whether Zila's act of returning the handbag without knowledge of the reward constitute a valid acceptance of Mila's offer. Then whether the timing of Zila's awareness of the reward offer occurring 1 week after she returned the handbag affect of the enforceability of the contract. Other than that, this statement creates an issue whether there was a valid acceptance of the offer by Mila. Lastly, whether Zila can sue Mila after Mila refused to give the reward to her.
A contract or agreement is usually reached by the process of offer and acceptance, and the law requires an offer on ascertainable terms which receive an unqualified acceptance from the person to whom it is made, based on Halsbury Law of England, 4th edition, reissue 1998, paragraph 62. According to the Section 2, subsection B of a Contract Act 1950, a contract is a legally binding agreement. It is a legally binding agreement reached between two parties and more parties. Every contract is derived from agreement, but every agreement is not a contract. This is due to some agreement that they lack specific elements. These are the elements of offer or proposition, acceptance, intent to create a legal relationships, consideration, certainty, capacity, and free concern. Thus, about the cases above, Mila makes an offer in the contract. An offer is the one of the element in the law of the contract. It is also known as a proposal. According to the Section 2, subsection A of the Contract Act, an offer is defined as an expression of willingness to a contract on a certain condition made with the intention that it shall become the binding after it is accepted by the offerer. An acceptance is a verbal agreement to accept something that has been provided. In the Section 2, subsection B of the Contract Act of 1950 provide that when the person to whom the proposition is given indicate his approval, the offer is said to be accepted and become a promise, unless the proposal specified on how will it be proved. It can be expressed in any common or reasonable manner. Consideration between two parties is required for the fourth element. Under Section 26 of the Contract of 1950 specified that an agreement without a consideration is null and invalid. Consideration is something of value, either the promise or the promiser, usually cash or property, which will be exchanged as the performance between the promise and the promiser. The consideration must be something that promise is giving up or something that benefit to the promise in order for the contract to be legally enforceable. Next, about the executed consideration when making a promise. Executed consideration happens if one party to a contract make a promise of act by another act. It is executed consideration when the act is done. If you offer the reward for a lost wallet and another person find it and will give it to you, that person consideration is executed. In the Section 2, subsection D of the Contract Act in 1950, define consideration as when at desire of the promiser, the promisee, or any other person has done or abstained from doing, or thus abstain from doing or promise to do or abstain from doing something such act, and abstinence or promise is called consideration for the promise. Referring to this situation, we can apply an English contract law case based involving of the requirement of the offer and acceptance in the contract creation, which is Fisher v. Bell in 1961, 1 QB 394. And the court determined that when the items are presented in the store, the seller treats the presentation as invitation to treat rather than offer. There are some cases that will similar with these cases between Mila and Zila. The cases will be similar to above. The cases is a Crown v. Clark in High Court of Australia in 1927. In 40 CLR 227, Western Australia Governance Crowns offered a monetary reward for the information leading to the arrest and conviction of the people responsible for the murder of the two police officers. The clerk was arrested in a connection with the murder and made a statement to the police about the murder, which led to the conviction of another man. Clerk was released and subsequently claimed the reward. And clerk saw this reward offered in May. However, the clerk was charged in connection with the crime and gave the statement in June, which led the conviction of others. He claims the rewards as a sudden.
The next one is application of law, usage of unilateral contract. The idea of a unilateral contract is the applicable legal premise in this case. In a unilateral contract, one party promises something in return for other party taking a certain action or performing a certain task. In this instance, firstly, Mila announced an Rm2,000 reward for the recovery of her misplaced handbag. It might be said that Mila made an offer when she published the reward advertisement in the newspaper. And then, Zila accepted the offer and did the act that was necessary to obtain the reward by returning the handbag. According to the Law of Contract 1915, revised 1974, acceptance takes place when the offeree, which is Zila, formally notifies the offerer, in this case Mila, that they intend to accept it by carrying out the required action. Zila can claim that by identifying the handbag and giving it back, she accepted Mila's offer and adhere to the condition of the contract. What should happen is, Zila is legally entitled to the cash reward because she had complied with the requirement of the unilateral contract. Zila read about the incentive in the newspaper advertisement, but Mila did not give her the reward. This was a breach of the agreement. To uphold agreement and obtain the promised payment, Zila may take legal action. Based on the principle of contract law, Zila may have a valid claim to the reward advertised by Mila. By returning the lost handbag, Zila fulfilled the requirement action outlined in the unilateral contract. Even though Zila learned about the reward after returning the bag, her act of returning the bag without prior knowledge of the reward can still be considered a valid acceptance of a Mila offers. Zila may argue that she is entitled to the reward based on terms of the unilateral contract. However, it is advisable for Zila to seek legal advice or explore alternative dispute resolution methods if Mila continues to refuse to give her the reward. In conclusion, Zila is not entitled to claim the reward because she is not aware of the reward from the beginning.